Hey, Bulls and Bears, how we doing? Back with another blast of economic reality. Back with another dose of economic reality. I forgot my own intro. That's what happens when you don't get enough sleep. Get enough sleep. Don't go on 5 hours sleep like me. Sometimes you see it in my face. You're like, JJ, you look rough today. You look beat down. You look old. Some days worse than others. When I don't get 8 hours, when I get 5 hours sleep, I'm really messed up. And that's why I start getting dates wrong and stuff like that. But my analysis, my news reporting, I think we're going to be on top of it for you today, even though I'm a little bit tired. Daily dose of economic reality, latest news, what I think is pretty eye-opening, pretty important. The UN demands that the Fed and other central banks stop raising interest rates, or you're going to see a global meltdown. How insane is this? We can't even raise interest rates without a global meltdown. It used to be just me saying this, or people like me, what people call doom and gloomers, or what people call preppers. I wouldn't say I'm a prepper. I mean, everybody's a prepper. When you think about it, everybody's a prepper. If you've ever bought in car insurance, you're a prepper. You're preparing not to have to pay out of pocket if you get into an accident. So you're preparing. You're a prepper. If you buy car insurance, you're preparing not to get a no insurance ticket because it's the law, right? So you're a prepper. Everyone's a prepper. So if you're preparing for anything, if you set your clothes out the night before so you know what you're going to put on tomorrow morning, that way you're not tired looking through your closet, you're preparing for the following day. If you've ever packed the lunch, you're preparing for having lunch to eat at a certain time, at lunchtime. So everybody's a prepper. So this word prepper gets thrown around. All we're doing is trying to prepare for what's ahead in this economy, and things don't look so good. We were called, I'm trying to think of the other words, fear mongers, doom and gloom. I can't think of the other words now. Perma bears, bust, bear bust. They said, change the channel to bear bust. That's what they said. Change the channel to bear bust because you're always negative. I'm not always negative. I'm just being real here. And now the UN is saying this. If we raise interest rates, a global meltdown is going to follow. This is wild, folks. Let's read this. The UN Conference on Trade and Development issued a report claiming that every percentage point rise in the Fed interest rate lowers economic output in other rich countries by 0.5% and poor countries by 0.8%. So we're going to hurt poor countries by raising interest rates. Well, yes, we've already hurt a lot of countries because the dollar has strengthened, and that's made even put more weakness in other currencies, and it's caused inflation to rise drastically and dramatically in many other countries. But let's think about this. So we can't raise rates without a meltdown, and it's going to lower economic output if we raise rates. So that means we need to have permanent economic bubbles. That means home prices have to stay way above what anybody can afford. That means the cost of food has to keep going up. Not that the rate hikes are stopping some of these prices from rising. It's helping in housing a little bit. But this is nuts that we have to keep the economy and these assets in bubbles in order not to trigger an economic meltdown. Quote here from this conference: the current course of action is hurting the most vulnerable, especially in developing countries, and risks tipping the world into a global recession. Notably, several economists' metrics show the U.S. has already slipped into recession under the current administration. In other words, despite the hawkish rhetoric, the Fed's interest rate hikes have come nowhere close to actually fighting inflation. Well, I'm glad somebody's admitting this. Now let's talk about the Bank of England again. The Bank of England has re-implemented QE, but prior to this, they were saying they were going to do whatever it takes to fight inflation. Kind of like what the Fed is saying now. So to avoid an economic crisis, to avoid pensions from melting down, to avoid the first domino falling and creating a huge collapse, they have, of course, reversed course and are now loosening. They're going to be lowering interest rates. They're re-implementing quantitative easing. They're going to be purchasing assets once again, big bond purchases. How long until something breaks here in the U.S. and then all of a sudden the Fed changes course and now they say, oh, by the way, back to QE, we have to avoid the crisis. We can't let an economic meltdown happen, when an economic meltdown is what we need to happen to correct some of these prices, to correct the cost of living. Yes, there's going to be pain. It's not going to be easy. This bid to avoid pain has gotten us into this mess. We should have never lowered rates after the 2008 financial crisis. We didn't learn our lesson in the early 2000s. Rates were too low for too long. Speculative purchases in the housing market, easy money, easy mortgage loans, all those crazy toxic loans that were bound to blow up at one point, created the bubble. And what do we do after the crisis? We re-implemented a near zero interest rate policy. We re-inflated the housing bubble with easy money. With lending, the banks were unleashed. Now the banks can loan out unlimited amounts of money compared to how much deposits they have. There's no longer any limit. Most of you know this by now. So things are much worse than they were before. The banks are unleashed now like never before. And here we are. Now we're talking about, the UN's talking about we cannot raise interest rates anymore. And they came short of just coming out and telling banks to lower rates again. That's what it sounds like to me. This is wild and this is insane, folks, the position that this economy is in right now. Next, this was reported out of Shift Gold and some other outlets here. Central banks add gold for 5th straight month. We have to ask the question again, if paper currency was the solution, why are central banks just not printing as much paper as possible and putting it in a warehouse somewhere? Because it's just paper. And they know that paper can be devalued very easily. Look what's happening in all these other countries. Multiple countries undergoing severe crisis level inflation right now. The US, we're doing the right thing for now, but the rate hikes need to be a lot more, in my opinion. But at least we're doing something. At least they didn't keep rates near zero. But again, why are banks not hoarding paper? Why don't they have warehouses full of paper if paper was the solution, if paper was the savior? Yes, the dollar is strong right now, and cash is king right now, because we're going to see some buying opportunities if they allow deflation to continue, especially in the housing market. So yes, cash is king. You want to hold cash when you think prices are going to come down. And I do think car prices are going to come down. I do think home prices are going to come down. Anyways, the first half of this year saw central banks add a net of 270 tons of gold. 270 tons of gold. So they can print up digital money, paper money. They can print as much as they want and buy real assets, real hard assets. How crazy is that? They can buy as much gold. Now, speaking of cash is king, and you want to have cash when prices are going to drop, or when prices do drop, you want to have cash. Out of Bloomberg, Ray Dalio no longer thinks cash is trash. So it's funny how everybody just reverses their view, right? So when assets were going up, everybody was like, okay, don't hold any cash, have everything in the markets, because markets are only going up. The stock market's only going up. The housing market's only going up. Now, money is not so easy. The easy money has left the building, and now cash is king once again. Isn't that crazy? So be careful, folks. Don't let this market get to these ups and downs. It's going to be a wild, wild rest of the year. Less than 3 months to go. And who knows what it's going to look like by the end of the year. But see some big things happening. Some warnings are out there. A lot of warning signs. FedEx warned us a couple weeks ago. Global meltdown, possible global recession. The warnings are everywhere. The UN warning, stop raising rates. How much of a bigger warning do you need? All right, people. Hope you guys like this update. Please let me know what you think down in comments. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for supporting this channel.